Hello and welcome to Greenbytes Wednesdays. Greenbytes Wednesdays is a podcast series where we facilitate critical conversations and steer consciousness when it comes to understanding the impact of our digital footprint across Nigeria's technology ecosystem. We hope that with this advanced knowledge, we can introduce you to some tools, trends, and best practices that can enhance your knowledge about digital sustainability. Are you curious about climate change? Are you a tech enthusiast or a climate entrepreneur? Come on board and learn on this episode as we get on with every conversation of the Greenbytes Wednesday podcast series. This podcast is proudly brought to you by Area I under the Scale Initiative, funded by the UK government through the Digital Access Program. My name is Seyifunmi Adebote and I am glad to be your host. Welcome on board. Day in, day out, we see new innovations and new technology being churned out, even here in Nigeria. And I acknowledge that some of these technology and apps, tools, trends are very much focused on answering questions around greenhouse gases emission and making the country more sustainable while still developing. And in previous episodes, we've talked about the interconnection between making these developments, technology or digitization, if you put it that way, and environmental or sustainability issues. How exactly do these two separate issues relate? And today on this episode, we'll be looking at a seemingly difficult question. Are digital innovations truly making Nigeria more sustainable, or is it the other way? Welcome. This is Greenbytes Wednesdays. My name is Seyifunmi Adebote. I am your host, and it's such a pleasure to sort of facilitate these critical conversations. And as you know, these conversations are meant to stir up some consciousness within you, the listener, or you who is watching, and ask yourself some questions, also to learn about new digital trends, innovations, and where does the place of sustainability come, even as we embrace improved ways of doing things. Please feel free to check other episodes that we've had, such that so that you can learn when it comes to digitization, sustainability, and environmental issues here in Nigeria. My guest today is Rita Idehai. Her profile is quite robust. I will see if I can manage to put it in very or if I could put it in very short phrases. I would say she is a social entrepreneur. She's also one of those who's leading when it comes to digitizing in the environmental sector. And what else do I say? Maybe you should introduce yourself. Welcome, Rita. It's good to have you on Greenbytes Wednesdays.
Thank you, Seyifunmi. Thank you so much for having me. And yes, my name is Rita Idehai. I'm the founder and CEO of Ecobarter, which is a leading social enterprise in Nigeria that is building technologies to collect, tokenize, and transform waste materials into new products. So, yes, happy to be here.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to have you here. And to you, the listener, what we try to do with these conversations is to see that you can learn about some citizen-led approach among Nigerians, to also discover some best practices outside of Nigeria, and such that we can collectively map out a sustainable future. Rita has been doing that when it comes to the waste sector, and when she says Ecobarter is one of the leading organizations when it comes to that, she's not capping, as we say it in the very casual lingo. And we'll be talking not just around the waste sector, but this conversation will spread across other thematic areas when it comes to environmental and sustainability issues. So my first question to you, Rita, let's see, are digital innovations today, are they really making Nigeria more sustainable? Yes or no? Let's start with that.
A big emphatic yes, all caps.
Really?
Yes, I would say.
Why so?
So let's start from the work that we do. We recently developed a machine that allows people to get money for their waste, right? That's one. So it means that, like people on Twitter said, you could literally be traveling when you're stranded. Instead of having to beg for money, then you can pick waste, go to the machine and get, be able to get some cash for it. That's on one side. On a more serious note, you see things like people with disabilities, people that, have visual impairments are able to use artificial intelligence. We have goggles, smart ones that are able to guide them. So it makes life easier, and that's still part of sustainability. When you talk about even things like agriculture also, with climate change, which is, what is happening right now, farmers are more vulnerable to diseases and pests and things that they do not even understand. Even rainfall patterns are now, very erratic. But you have digital innovations that are helping them to adapt better to these problems. You have solar-powered, irrigation systems. You have apps that they can basically just scan like a particular plant and it tells them what the disease is, even if they've never heard about it. So yes, I would say a big yes. Digital innovation is helping us live better now.
Okay, great. And I know that your work is around the work you do. You've transited from the very basic local, if I could put it that way, picking up ways to using technology to do that. But this conversation will sort of stream across the different areas of the nationally determined contribution, the NDCs as we call it. And for those of you who don't know, Nigeria has this framework which is called the Nationally Determined Contribution, NDCs, and it's a framework that seeks to help the country achieve net zero by 2060. And basically, it's just how we coordinate or mobilize and track the progress that we make when it comes to 7 different sectors. I'll tell you about the 7th sector in a bit. But first, the projection is to see that there is like a 20% reduction, which is called like the voluntary, and then another 47% reduction in greenhouse gases emission if we get support from other parties or outside of the Nigerian context. And you might be wondering, what are these 7 sectors? First, it was 5 sectors, and it was around oil and gas, which is a very big emitter. The power sector, as you can imagine, a very big emitter. Transportation, industry and housing, then agriculture, forestry, and land use. And very quite recently, they added 2 other sectors, which is the waste and the water sector. So it's across this 7 sector that the government of Nigeria hopes to address how greenhouse gases have been emitted, how we track progress. And this conversation today will sort of stem across these sectors and see what are the digital approach to see that we reduce our greenhouse gases in these sectors. And we also reverse or flip a little bit and ask the question, if truly these innovations are bringing down emissions or if it's otherwise. And if I could start with you, very recently you launched what people have decided to call the bottle for ATM, the reverse vending machine. And the idea is that people can pick bottles from the street and, recycle or sort of put it in there, get some funds, and you get to recycle moving forward. But talk about the energy consuming part of this. This is the part nobody wants, pretty much, even you don't talk about. And that's why we're having this conversation. So away from the with digital tools, we are making the world, or we're making Nigeria more sustainable. Let's talk about what it means for the energy consumption, what it means in terms of other forms of emissions that you produce across this value chain.
Okay, so that's a very tough one, but very easy to answer because it's something that we consider. So I would start from saying that when you are solving a problem, it's very, very difficult and maybe even unrealistic to think that you would go from, 0 to 100 in one day. So when we calculate the emission reduction from our work, you factor in if people were dumping their waste the way they were dumping it and burning it openly or discarding along drainage ways, what is the emission that we would get from that? So for this conversation, let's say you get 100 tons, right, of CO2 emissions. And then if we decide to say, sort your waste at home, we power a truck to come to you, or we have a machine the way we do now, and then we use the grid power to power the machine. and we recycle the material instead of trashing it, what emissions are we reducing? So that's how we look at it. It's not 100%. So when they say sustainable solutions or climate actions, it's not a matter of those actions do not emit. It's how significant, the emissions is reduced. When you produce solar panels, which are, even excellent for the environment, the fact that you have to mine the resources that you use in making the panels means that some emissions are being, generated. But along the value chain or the life cycle, it's still emits less. So coming back to what we do, right? Yes, I think our machine uses about 0.12 kilowatt per hour, which is ridiculously small. The machines are also currently battery powered. The goal for us is to get to a place where all of our reverse vending machines are solar powered. Again, it doesn't mean that we won't generate emissions or we won't, create some carbon emissions, because at the end of the day, even if you put your bottles in those machines, we need a truck. Thankfully we have an hybrid, so we have trucks that are fossil fuel powered, we have trucks that are EV powered, but it still means that some emissions are still being generated. Yeah. But what we're doing for the environment is that we're reducing a lot of the greenhouse gas emissions that would ordinarily have gone into the environment. Annually, we do about 2,000 tons of CO2 emissions by just recycling plastic waste for people. So yes, it's not 100%, but we're doing a lot.
Great, thanks. And by the way, I visited, and for the first time I saw the reverse vending machine at City Park, and I know that you have about a dozen out there. Congrats on that. But let's move a little bit away from waste. Like I said, there are 6 other sectors. We have water, we have agriculture, forestry and land use, we have oil and gas, power sector, transportation sector. Are there specific digital innovations that you are aware of that is currently being implemented across the sectors, and that these innovations promote sustainability?
Yes, so I think I'll start from agriculture. I hope I can get across all of them. For agriculture, there are now applications that are bilingual. So because although I wouldn't say that it's a particular tribe or a particular language that farms, but that a lot of our crops come, from the north. So it's essential that this particular applications I'm speaking about so even an illiterate can use them. So they, both English and Hausa or local languages, right? And then you could go to the farm and scan like a plant, right? And then it tells you what disease or what is wrong with the plant and give you recommendations of how to revive the plant. And this is essential because we're very, very vulnerable to climate crisis. And one of the ways that we're vulnerable is because our agriculture in Nigeria is still largely rain-fed. So it means that if rain is not, constant, or farmers cannot predict when rain would come and when it will stop and things like that, they cannot farm properly, right? And if they can, plant properly, their crops are more vulnerable to these diseases. So that's how agriculture or climate change affects agriculture in one way. And of course, if most of our farmers in Nigeria, most of the food that we get come from this type of small older farmers. So these innovations that help them to properly cater to their plants and their crops help us adapt better to the climate change. Right. And I'm going to say adapt because while some of your questions are towards reducing emission, we're in Nigeria, and when I'm talking about climate action, I like to put a good balance between us fighting to reduce emission and us fighting to also adapt to the, imploding climate change. So that's one on agriculture. The other thing that is happening a lot with agriculture is the use of, solar-powered irrigation systems on smallholder farms. So normally, again, like I said, most of our farms are rain-fed, right? And it's very, very expensive to set up an irrigation system on large-scale farms, and that's one of the reasons why farmers don't do that. But now we're having innovations and startups that are working around that and providing irrigation services to farmers. And so it's easier for the farmers because they don't even have to buy or set up all on their own. So these companies come and do like a cooperative or like a number of farmers, like aggregation, and then you can lease to use. So it makes life easier for them. On housing,
maybe just before you move to housing, I also know of 2, and maybe I could just put it out there. I know there is a young man working somewhere within the northern region of Nigeria, and his technology is very basic. he does the research and then he sends text messages directly to the farmers to tell them this is when it will likely rain, this is when you can start planting, based on the fact that climate is changing and they can no longer predict based on knowledge from the past. There is also a friend who works with drone technology, precision farming.
Yes,
you probably know about that.
Yes,
Do you know how it works?
Oh, yes. So again, it's still identifying, some of the things that are happening on the farms that the farmers do not have prior knowledge or traditional knowledge about. Because like we said, climate is changing. So a lot of new things are springing up, things that they've not seen before. So with drone technology, right, you run a drone through like a large farm, and you can take pictures, you can see what is happening, you can see if some crops are not growing at the rate that they're supposed to grow. So it helps you to be able to cover more ground, faster and with lesser costs. So yeah.
And we're not there yet, but I know of technology that also, with drone-powered system, they can harvest, selectively harvest. But away from that, you are going to move us into housing, which is also another big sector when it comes to greenhouse gas emission.
Yeah.
What are the digital technologies that is helping us get across or sort of get around emissions in the housing?
So I think for housing, there is a lot happening around the materials that are being used. So you would see people even use, again, I'm coming back to waste, a lot of plastic waste. So plastic. Now you're making bricks with plastics, and that reduces some emissions. You would also see a lot of greenhouses, so apartments that now have like greenhouse on top of them or have some vegetations on top of them. You would see even people using makeshift, say, containers now to build entire office complex, and all of those reduce like material use. I think when it comes to housing, reducing material use, reducing exploitation is one of the things that you're looking at. Also, there is the word you use, very local technology about saving water, especially like in cities or communities where, there is no, like the potable water supply is poor.
Yes.
So you have people that have a way. So this is not like a digital technology, it's just an innovative way to adapt to what is happening on how they save water during raining season, and then they're able to use it better during dry season. And yes, so coming to water too. So I know now that there are technologies around around dispensing water. So you would see in very rural communities where people have to travel distances before they can get water from a stream or something. So now there are innovations that are bringing ATMs for water into local communities. So the thing again with some of these digital innovations is adoption. These innovations are there, but are people using them? That's a whole different conversation that I hope we don't have to talk about. But yes, let me see which other NDCs there.
Maybe we can move to transport sector, because that's also one of the biggest. I think it's around 12 to 15% when it comes to the percentage.
I think with transportation, the energy use is one of the biggest things that people are trying to innovate around. So now you see the old buzz around CNGs or even just EVs, battery-powered vehicles, and those are some of the innovations that I'm hoping that in Nigeria we can, ramp up and scale up. Again, because of the complexity of the country, when you talk about, say, battery-powered vehicles now, where is the light to power? So it doesn't make sense to put on a fossil fuel power generator to charge your EV vehicle. But so yes, it's still some of the things that are going on now. So you see tricycles, you see bicycles, you see cars that are being powered by battery, and so that considerably reduces emissions. So I think that's some of the things that are there. Even things like carpooling services.
Yeah, I was going to get to that. Yes.
Carpooling services also help to reduce emission, because imagine a home where, 4 adults are having to drive out, and now, all of them are using one vehicle and stuff like that. So those are some of the innovations.
Absolutely. And I know we have like applications, I don't want to market for anyone, but we have these apps that people use, and there are new innovations that help you to choose the price that you want to pay, or that helps you to decide if you want to go with other people rather than going alone. And I think these are some digital solutions helping. Any thoughts? Maybe you've spoken about it a little bit, but any thoughts around the power, oil and gas sector, around digital
That's beyond
solutions?
my pay grade in this country. No.
So as we move on with the conversation, maybe we can stem a little bit to the role of the government when it comes to policies. As you probably know, I had always thought that we could do a lot as individuals and as organizations. But then I discovered that the role of policy is really, really important when it comes to how much progress we make. And I know that in Nigeria, for example, there was the startup bill that civil society tried to really repeal or sort of fight against, and they made some headway. And I think this is one of the many ways through which government policies can sort of intersect with digital solutions. What are your thoughts when it comes to the role of government policies in improving digitization?
So the role of governments and policies cannot be emphasized, right? Because I say often that there is a level that you cannot get to, no matter how interesting your solution is. For you to scale and make that transformational change that we need, you need government support. And government support is in terms of policies, So yes, the startup bill made a lot of headway. I think it's still, so the challenge right now, or where the startup bill is in trying to domesticate it across, the states. Because for example, I still got a mail last week to even update profile. So it's still in the works. There are other, across the different sectors. In environment and waste management, for example, there are different programs. But my challenge with how policies is done in Nigeria is that they are mostly externally driven. So again, for the waste management, which I'm very familiar with, you would see that most of the innovations and most of the policies that drive innovations are being championed by development partners or multilateral organizations, so AFDB, UNIDO, and things like that. It's very rare that EU, in fact, it's very rare that you see that, the Nigerian government, from within the government, is championing policies that drive innovations. So, but I am hoping that we get to a place where we have all of the resources, all of the experts within our government that are able to champion the right policies, because we need them. Right now, we do not have enough policies, and I'm not saying we don't have any, but we do not have enough. So let me emphasize on that drive or encourage people to innovate around environment and climate action.
So moving forward now, like I said when I started, regardless of the policy roadblocks or hindrances, we still would make progress. We'll still try to put out new applications. What do you foresee in the considerable future when it comes to how we think about digitizing solutions for our everyday life?
I think it's going to be the norm, because technology is here to stay. And now that there are certain technologies like the social media, it more or less collapses the distance between us and those developed countries, right? So it means that some of the things that have been done there, some of the innovations that are there, right, we can easily see them now and adopt them here. So I don't see us going back, honestly. I see that we are going to be faster, in fact, with our innovations. Like, so let's say it took us 20 years to go from 0 to 10. It's going to take us like 5 years to go from 10 to 70, and maybe a year or two to go from 70 to 100, So there is no going back. I see more innovations, especially, around waste management, around agriculture, around transportation. I'm hoping that with oil and gas, because of how intricate and how central it is to Nigeria's economy, and it's a very regulated space. So I'm hoping that the government is going to champion more innovations around oil and gas also.
That is a very sensitive part, and we love to talk about other areas, especially when you engage with the government, but you don't want to touch where their money comes from. As environmentalists, or those of us in the sustainability sector, the government wants to hear everything good about being green and sustainable, but when you talk about, okay, we don't need oil again, or we should look away from oil, and then you get some stares in the room. But as we move on with the conversation, I think one other thing that I want to know from you, if we step a little bit away outside of Nigeria, are there digital solutions or digital innovations that you think has really sort of steered us in that direction of sustainability that could be like best practice for like a young Nigerian innovator out there?
Okay, so I think that those ones that get me are things that we have here. The only challenge is, unlike in developed countries or even countries like Kenya, where these solutions are more like popular and mainstream. We are not there yet in Nigeria. So again, the reverse vending machine across Europe, Germany, all of those countries, it's there. There is no reason for you to even Korea, in fact, I think they recycle up to 80%, recycle and compost. So there is no reason for you to trash your waste, right? There is no reason for you to mix up things. And I go back to waste because mixing your waste together, especially your organic waste, contributes a lot to methane emission. And methane is even 25 times more potent than carbon emissions, so that's even a lot. So there are systems already to collect these things. There are innovations already that allow people to sort their waste that I think that we should adopt. That's one. The second thing was on what I had mentioned. Right now people have to even buy water in sachet because we don't have potable water running into most homes for a lot of issues. Right? There are innovations around this. Like I mentioned, there are young and startups that are getting water ATMs to local rural communities. Same thing for agriculture. Our farmers depend a lot on traditional knowledge, right? And there is lack of support, lack of innovation, lack of technology, even literacy is a problem, right? There are innovations, we had mentioned them, that are solving this problem. But like I said, in Nigeria, you would have, pockets and pockets and pockets of solutions. In the countries where I am envying, right? The governments, and now going back to policies, have been able to put together all of these pockets of solutions to one large, national movement, and that's the major difference. So I don't think, like off the top of my head, I don't think there are like innovations anywhere right now that we don't have or we've not, well, except of course for like space travel, but that we don't have here. For me, it's just how do we make sure that it goes from one startup doing something in one community to this being on the national scene.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. I have been speaking with Rita Idehai. Rita is a social entrepreneur. She works at the nexus of responsible consumption, social inclusion, and circular economy. And we've been speaking, asking the difficult question: are digital innovations truly making Nigeria more sustainable, or is it the other way? And for her, she says very much so. With digital innovations, we are becoming a more sustainable country. As we take this conversation home now, I turn to you, Rita, and I want to know, what challenges do you see in integrating some of this digital innovation? As you know, Nigeria is a very color stereotype, if you want, and we find it very difficult to move away from what we are used to, maybe not just Nigeria. So tell us, what are the challenges that you see when it comes to integrating digital innovations or technology as against traditional practices?
So I think the biggest challenge, of course, is adoption and, like you said, stereotypes. But why and how I think we can resolve that is by ensuring that when we go into these communities, it is in your planning, your decision making, and even like your adoption strategy should be inclusive. What I mean by that is you don't dismiss traditional knowledge. So let's say you want, again, let's go back to agriculture and say you go to a community of farmers and you want to introduce the application that scans plants and talks about diseases to them. You wouldn't go there, dismissing all that they know, right? You would go there telling them that, yes, this platform validates your knowledge, but there are new things that, because of the changing climate, are now here that have not been here before. And so this platform helps you to, it more or less doubles your knowledge. So it's the manner of approach, the language, that we use. So when you sit back in the city and you create solutions, by the time you want to get it to end users, right, it is very, very important that you get it to them, you communicate it to them in languages that they understand. That's the first thing. And that you're also very inclusive in how you even plan, ideate, and most importantly, distribute your solution, right? So that's on one side. The second challenge that we have to adoption, sadly, we have to come back to policies, is that sometimes, people do not even know that they have certain problems. When you're so used to a way of life, you don't even know that there is a problem, right? And so this is where you need policies to champion digital innovations and courses. Just mandate people to use certain things, like mandate people to, carpool, or mandate every house to sort of invest in solar, those kind of things. So, and you then have to also have some incentives to encourage these things. So when I say mandates, it's not as if they don't go there, you go with soldiers or something. You have to, there is a carrot and stick thing. So I think in developed countries, Norway, for example, how they were able to get people to adopt clean energy was to make sure that, or to have a system where if you maybe buy solar or wind or any other type of clean energy, you could claim some tax rebate on that. And so people that didn't want to pay tax in the first place just went on buying. And then there was a way where you could even sell your excess energy back to the grid. So if we have some of these things, it would reduce the stereotypes or the difficulty people have with adopting some of these technologies.
Okay, I see. And I was just reflecting on some of the conversation we had earlier. I was thinking about how many times we think of emissions in terms of primary emissions, and that is, the ones we see. We do not think about how digital innovations are also sort of the secondary emissions, the cloud computing, the systems where all of this data is being stored. And like you said, we'll have more and more digital solutions in the coming days. Do you have thoughts around how do we embrace this many digital solutions, but still, beyond the primary emissions, be more conscious about secondary emissions and sort of take away the weight that secondary emissions put on the environment?
So I think that we need to give credit to organizations that are championing these digital innovations, right? I would say for a fact that most times these organizations think about the sustainability and the impact of their work. I think there are even policies like do no harm. So it means that you cannot be solving a problem and not think of the life cycle of your own solution and how it will affect the environment. So and this is an example is some of this data centers, for example, are looking for ways and creating mini grids and cleaner energy sources to power the data center outside of fossil powered solutions. And that's one of the things that they're doing. You would see smaller organizations also, like I said, so some organizations in the transport space or logistics space, right, are trying to green their fleets. So they might come down from maybe diesel, petrol, and now use CNG, and now to a place where they are even using battery powered vehicles. So I think from my own experience, most of like the clean energy companies, most of the sustainability companies that I'm aware of, even if they do not have it in place at the moment, maybe because of lack of funds, they always have sustainability, like entire life cycle sustainability in the plan and in the works. So I think that yes, people are taking cognizance of the secondary emissions, right, and are planning to also work around it.
Okay, great. As we call it a wrap, I've learned a lot from this conversation, and I'm sure that the listener also has. And let me pause to say, please feel free to share with your network. Also find Greenbytes Wednesday on Spotify, on Apple, iTunes, YouTube, SoundCloud, wherever it is you find podcasts, you'll find Greenbytes Wednesdays. But as we take it home and sort of call it a wrap, what do you think should be the take home? You said very clearly, and I'll ask you again just before you give your take home. Do you truly believe that digital innovations is making Nigeria more sustainable? And what do you think should be the take home from this conversation?
Yes, I truly believe it's making Nigeria more sustainable. And my take home for everybody is that digital innovation is here to stay. There is literally no going back, right? So, and in everybody's small corner, you can be a part of this. You can innovate around, we all have access to technology now, or a good percent of us have access to technology now. So you can be a part of the change, be a part of the solution, create a solution for, whatever problem you have around you, especially as it relates to climate action and climate change. So yes, there is no going back.
Great. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, Rita. Thanks so much for coming on Greenbytes Wednesday. And I've just been thinking lately, I spoke to a friend also, with the rising cost of fuel, I thought of an app like Go My Way, and if I find people that are going my way, I can pick them and we share the cost. Probably you're also thinking about some solution, and this could help us make, some advancement when it comes to embracing digital solution, but yet making Nigeria a more sustainable place. And for no matter how crude or very basic these ideas come to you, I hope that you will take some actions and make Nigeria more sustainable. That's the package on this episode of Greenbytes Wednesday. Thank you so much for the time, for listening. And like I said, you can find the podcast on Spotify, on YouTube, on SoundCloud, wherever it is you find podcasts, and share with your friends, subscribe, and put out the word that we're having these critical conversations. We're steering consciousness about digital innovations in Nigeria and sustainability. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks to the team, Ajibola, to Ayo, to Wonderful, and the entire team that has made this a success. My name is Seyifunmi Adebote. Until the next time when you hear from me, do all you can to make the world a better place. Bye for now. Thank you very much for joining us on this episode of Greenbytes Wednesday. This podcast is brought to you by Area I under the Scale Initiative, thanks to funding from the UK government through the Digital Access Program. Have you learned something new? Please share with your network, share with your friends, as I look forward to hosting you on yet another episode of Greenbytes Wednesday next week. Follow us on our social media platforms, check out our courses, test yourself, see how much you know, how much you're learning when it comes to digital and sustainability ecosystem in Nigeria. And I should remind you that as you balance your knowledge of digital ecosystem, also remember to stay committed to a shared and sustainable planet. My name is Seyifunmi Adebote. Bye for now.